Introduce yourself in the chat with your screen name and the organization you are with. Put questions for the panelists in the Q&A. Today, our guest moderator, Pamela Greenlaw from the Midlands Group Sierra Club, will be discussing the environmental challenges facing South Carolina with our state senator, Mia McLeod, who is a 2022 South Carolina Democratic candidate for governor. Mia McLeod has represented South Carolina's 22nd Senate District for the past 6 years. Prior to that, she served in the South Carolina House from 2011 to 2016. Senator McLeod graduated from the University of South Carolina School of Law. She's a 7th generation South Carolinian and a small business owner. I'd like to say hi to Barbara, who has joined, and Andrea, who has joined our meeting. And I want to thank everybody who has come on. I see Elaine and Rod, some of our perennial guests here. So once again, my name's Alan, and thanks for joining our Revolution South Carolina's March meeting on the environment. Please introduce yourself in the chat with your screen name and the organization you are with. Put questions for the panelists in the Q&A. Today, our guest moderator, Pamela Greenlaw from the Midlands Group Sierra Club, will be discussing the environmental challenges facing South Carolina with our state senator, Mia McLeod, who was a 2022 South Carolina Democratic candidate for governor. Mia has represented South Carolina's 22nd Senate District for the past 6 years. Prior to that, she served in the South Carolina House from 2011 to 2016. Senator McLeod graduated from the University of South Carolina School of Law. She's a 7th generation South Carolinian and a small business owner. So now let's go to Lucero Mesa to kick off our March forum.
Thank you, Alan. Good morning. I am Lucero Mesa, co-chair of our Revolution South Carolina, and I am pleased to welcome all of you to our bi-monthly event as continuation of our commitment to work very hard towards a better South Carolina and a better country. The fight never ends because justice is far from being reached. Our guests today are candidate for governor, Senator Mia McLeod, and we also have the pleasure to have as a moderator, Ms. Pamela Greenlaw, who is the chair of the Midlands Sierra Club. We appreciate you joining us today. Unfortunately, former Representative Joe Cunningham could not join us today due to other engagements. As part of our ongoing discussions on issues that affect our state, our Revolution South Carolina continues to provide a discussion platform to inform South Carolina voters about how political decisions affect our daily lives. The struggle continues for Medicaid expansion in South Carolina and for an improved and expanded Medicare for all. Climate change is real, and I know I am preaching to the choir here. That is why we wanted to have our candidates for governor joining our conversation about environmental issues in South Carolina. Some politicians understand the impact of environmental hazards on families' health, economical and emotional stability too. We will hear from Senator McLeod about water and air pollution, food chain pollution, South Carolina DHEC's Don't Waste food program, and more. Climate change causes extreme weather conditions such as tornadoes, wildfires, droughts that affect our state agriculture and well-being, and floods that have had severely impacted mostly poor communities. Thanks again, Senator McLeod, for accepting our invitation to discuss with us such an important issue. And before we hear from Hal, our amazing Our Revolution National Organizer Coordinator, I have the pleasure to announce that our Revolution South Carolina officially endorsed Senator Mia McLeod for Governor of South Carolina. I ask all of you to join us today to support her campaign in any way possible. Hal?
let me just see. We're having a little bit of tech issues here. I apologize for that. Thank you so much, Lucero. It's great to be on this call. And I'm going to just go ahead and put it back at the opening slide. So it's a conversation with Democratic gubernatorial candidate Mia McLeod. And we're so excited to have Pamela Greenlaw. We were speaking with her before the call started about the environmental commitment that State Senator McLeod has. And it's really exciting, even in a red state, to have a elected official, a state senator who is running for governor, who really gets the climate crisis, who understands the need for clean, green, renewable energy to move away from fossil fuels. So she is an environmental champion, and we're very, very excited to have State Senator McLeod with us on the call. I do want to thank so much Lucero for being such a great leader, along with Keith and Alan and Andrea, who are here all the time keeping this group going. It is just very, very heartening, and it shows you that we do have the ability to make real change and to make things better in this country. I do want to talk a little bit about what we're doing nationally, a few of our campaigns. So there's our 14.3 campaign, Block Insurrectionists from the Ballot. You can see some of the events we've done in the past month or so. We've got pictures there from Maryland, from Ohio, from Pennsylvania. A lot of media attention on our urge, on our ask to block those who attempted to take over our government in an anti-democratic coup a little over a year ago because they were not happy with the election results. We've got to stand up for the Constitution, which provides insurrectionists are not allowed to hold office. You cannot violate your oath of office, your commitment to the Constitution, and then attempt to subvert it. And that is exactly what happened on the 6th of January, 2021. So we are fighting to block those insurrectionists from the ballot. We hope you'll join us in that endeavor. And we'll give you an email in a minute where you can click on that if you want to get more involved in our campaigns. Another, it's not exactly a campaign, but I was just so proud that we were involved in the movement for worldwide peace. Just a little over, I guess it was a week, almost 2 weeks ago now, or exactly 2 weeks ago, I think. We were down on the mall in D.C., we were in Philadelphia, all over the country saying, hey, you know what? Look, what Putin is doing in Ukraine is awful, it's wrong, but we cannot have World War III because of a conflict that's half a world away. We cannot allow that to degenerate into a World War III. So we were out there campaigning for peace. And of course, we're now going to go right back to South Carolina, Palmetto State, for our environmental forum. But before we do that, just want to tout some victories, what we're doing around the country, electing progressive champions. In Texas, the first primary in the nation, the midterms, 3 great congressional challengers. None of them are in office, all had great results. Greg Casar in the Austin-San Antonio region won handily in the primary. We helped support Greg, just as we're going to help support State Senator McLeod in her campaign for governor. Greg is on to the general election. Jasmine Crockett in a runoff election. Jessica Cisneros against the most conservative. She's primarying the most conservative Democrat. The only one, Henry Cuellar, is the only Democrat in Congress to vote against the PRO Act, the Protect the Right to Organize Act. So we are very excited to hopefully defeat Henry Cuellar in the runoff in South Texas, Rio Grande Valley. So a lot of really exciting stuff. If you want to help us continue, please, ourrev.us/scmem. Just any contribution, $5 a month or more. You're part of the team and really can help us continue this great organizing and the organizing you're seeing right here in the Palmetto State. So We do have a little extra time because, as Lucero mentioned, State Senator McLeod is just running a little bit late. We totally understand that. Now, let me turn the meeting over to Keith Gray, Sr. from Our Revolution, South Carolina. Keith, take it away. I think you're muted, Keith.
Thank you, Hal, and greetings to everyone this morning. Mia McLeod is currently the state senator from SC 22. Previously, she had served in the South Carolina House from 2011 to 2016. She has a law degree from the University of South Carolina School of Law. And she is a 7th generation South Carolinian and part of a small business that her family's owned for, I believe it's 3 generations now. We really appreciate the leadership she has shown on the environmental issues that impact our state, but particularly the issues that hit the disadvantaged communities. Now, I'd like to introduce our guest moderator, Pamela Greenlaw from the Midlands Sierra Club. I'm sorry, misstated. Midlands Group Sierra Club. We'll be discussing the environmental challenges facing South Carolina with our state senator, Mia McLeod, who is campaigning to be the 2022 South Carolina Democratic candidate for governor. Pamela, tell us something about your group, if you would, please.
Thank you so much, Keith. I appreciate it. And we are tickled to have been invited to moderate. And I say we because I am representing our group. Our group covers 11 counties in the Midlands area, and then some. We also include Aiken County and Allendale and Barnwell counties, which are impacted by nuclear issues and pollution and current threats. And I am very tickled to say that I am very happy to be able to speak with Senator McLeod. She's one of my favorites. I don't know if she knows what a big fan I am, but I have been forever. And so to move away from the personal, Senator McLeod, we do have some questions, and I'm going to ask them as we prepare a final copy. However, feel free to expound, okay? Okay. And if you have, need some clarification or whatever, we can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and also say thank you for all of the years of work of your dedication to justice and to the environment. So thank you so much. And I'm going to. All right, great. So, the questions were put together, and these are the ones that are all approved by Our Revolution and us. We work together. So I'm going to begin with particular kinds of pollution, but we know they overlap, and so I'm just going to go ahead and start. One question here is what would be this is about water pollution, what would be an equitable plan for providing and maintaining safe, healthy, and plentiful clean water for drinking, irrigating, bathing, etc., throughout the state, and especially in poor and rural counties?
Well, as many of you know, I was born and raised in a small rural county in Bennettsville, South Carolina. I'm from Marlboro County. And I believe wholeheartedly that, we have to ensure the quality and safety of our water to protect our children, our elderly, and most vulnerable, those who, like me, live with chronic conditions that could be worsened by, water that is toxic and not safe and polluted. So clean drinking and bath water is vitally important to human health, and it's important to promote economic development, especially in rural communities across our state. I think if the pandemic didn't teach us anything else, it should have taught us that when something like that happens, it really just worsens the already obvious disparities and inequities as it relates to those who live in rural communities. So these communities are always marginalized when it comes to the environment, when it comes to racial and social economic justice, when it comes to education. And, so to have them further marginalized because of the environmental concerns is extremely concerning to me. And we know that an emerging class of toxins, I think they're called PFAs, are threatening our drinking water across South Carolina. And honestly, the McMaster administration is doing absolutely nothing about it, has so far not set any standards. I recently discovered that Charleston's water is, I think I read, the most polluted. Did not realize that, but I am aware of the challenges that the residents of Denmark face. And I've been at least monitoring that and trying to engage as much as I can. What I would like to do as governor is first accept all of the federal money that is coming into South Carolina. I am the only legislator who wrote the governor when the ARPA money was first released. That's the American Rescue Plan Act money. And I was concerned because we have, I think, 253 small cities and towns in South Carolina. And of those 253, only 17 were able to access their funding, their ARPA funding, directly from the federal government. Now, that funding could be used for water and sewer and other infrastructure improvements, but certainly to improve and to protect the environment and improve the quality of our waters in those rural communities. And the governor could only request the money. He couldn't determine how it would be spent. He couldn't determine what it would be spent on. That would be left up to those small cities and towns that the money had already been designated for. But he sat on it. He slow walked it. I had mayors calling me from rural communities across South Carolina asking, what they could do to go ahead and access that money. Now, this is money that the federal government sent to South Carolina, slated for South Carolina, and slated for specific amounts for those small cities and towns. And the current governor, did absolutely nothing with the money. He told the media that he was forming committees to figure out how it could be spent. That wasn't his role. He didn't have that option. That wasn't available to him. The federal government had already done that. So my thing is access and allow these small cities and rural communities to actually use the money that has already been sent to us by the federal government for the needs like water and air and land. I mean, we need infrastructural improvements and environmental improvements in all of those spaces. And that money could have been used for that. I would also, as governor, not wait on the federal government to act, as we often do now, because South Carolinians are drinking poison, toxic water as we speak. And so I don't think that we can wait on the federal government. But for the pandemic, those resources wouldn't even have been available. And even after they were available, it wasn't a priority for him to make sure that the rural communities that money was slated for received those funds. So he did, though, after I publicly exposed the fact that he had not requested the money, which was all he could do. He did go ahead and request that money. So it's my understanding that those cities and towns that were held up for months while he sat on the money are now able to benefit and use that money to help improve our water in those rural communities. Uh-oh, I can't hear you. I think you're muted. I still can't hear you. Is it just me?
No,
Yeah,
it's
there
not
we
just,
go.
Okay. Okay.
I clicked too fast and then I knew it was. No, thank you for your answer, because you touched on the Justice 40 money, which we have as a separate question, but I think it's one of those things that can be incorporated. And just to explain what Justice 40 is, we know that now maybe I should ask you to explain it, because you could do it succinctly about how this money is to go to these, how much of the money is coming in are to go to these communities. And then the other thing is that currently what I have heard, and I might be wrong, but this is going to come up repeatedly. So I want to ask you that in the General Assembly, there is a system for communities to compete for the money, to write out applications for the money, which will take money to get grant writers, sorts of things. I wonder if you'll clarify that, because that's something someone asked me, and I want to know if you can elucidate on that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to look into that. I'm not clear either on what that entails. I know that there are some grant opportunities available with some of the federal funding. And usually grants come with not only you have to write the grant, but you got to have matching funds and all of that. So I'm looking into that right now to make sure that our citizens aren't overburdened trying to compete for those funds, because it's my understanding that the ARPA money, there is no competition for that particular pot of money. And that could be a game changer for all of our rural communities and small towns and cities. So I am looking into that to make sure that, while competition is good, competition in crisis is not good. And I want to make sure that we are still in crisis, in my opinion. And so I want to make sure that our citizens aren't burdened or saddled with having to come up with additional resources themselves just to compete for money that they would otherwise be able to get.
Thank you so much. And so I'm going to try to move forward. We have a lot of questions that we want to continue with and go in the chat. I'll try not to deviate, but that's a front burner thing. Concerning the food chain, you already said our soil is already, and water and air are already polluted. So how can we better protect farm workers and prevent groundwater pollution? And how can SC South Carolina better monitor and enforce rules concerning waste?
Well,
for hogs and other plants, especially affecting neighborhoods of color.
Right. So let's talk a little bit first about pesticide and herbicide use. We have to protect our farm workers and our land from groundwater contamination. We also have to do a better job of monitoring and enforcing the rules around food waste, because we know that there are all kinds of impacts, serious illnesses, including cancer, respiratory diseases, contamination of land, air, and water by concentrated waste of farm animals. So when you think about the fact that there are so many signs that tell us that we are going down the wrong road, whether it's foul odors or just the reduced air quality and the quality of life in those areas. Those are things that we have to be especially cognizant of, because while that waste from farm animals is being used, it does pollute the air and it does pollute the water. And so we have to figure out a way to reduce emissions. We have to figure out a way to use clean energy and protect our environment. And I'm learning a lot more now that I serve on the Medical Affairs Committee, because some of these issues come before my committee. Well, most of these issues come before my committee. So I too am learning about how much, what we can do and how we can do it. But I'm especially interested in like the toxic fumes and their impact, because I think those odors tell us something about what's actually happening that we may not always be thinking about. And we've got staff now who are looking at the studies that link the concentrated, what is CAFO? Concentrated animal feeding operations, I think it is. Okay, so we've got staff that are looking at those studies right now, trying to figure out how we can best approach it, because it's not that the pandemic created these issues that are before us, but they certainly made them worse. And so, we're looking at all of the areas that we need to address, particularly in the rural communities, and those communities that are riddled with pipelines and heavy vehicles and all kinds of other pollutants. So, and when I think about the disproportionate impact on communities of color, it really does make me sad, because those are the very communities that don't have hospitals anymore. And those are the communities that have food deserts, and the communities that are overburdened and oppressed when it comes to public education and economic opportunities. So it just kind of piles on with additional health risks and health issues, challenges that are worsened, not just by the pandemic, but by the pollutants and the toxins that they are grappling with. So I do want to take a look at the CAFOs and make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect our farm workers, our elderly, people living with chronic health conditions, and folks, people of color who are just disproportionately impacted in a negative way by all of it. And I can tell you that as governor, I will continue to fight the status quo. That's what I've been doing for the last 12 years. And that's what I'll continue to do as governor. There's a reason that the Republicans have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep me out of the seat, because they know I'm not afraid to use my voice in a big way for the people of South Carolina. I'll continue to work with my colleagues in the General Assembly to leverage private investment and to help communities most impacted by climate change and environmental injustices. So, that's not something, these are areas that I've always championed, which is why I've always had the support of the environmental enthusiasts and activists in our community. And I will continue to do that as governor. I see that the governor recently said that he is going to be about the environment. And I'm like, oh, wow. How long have you been in office? And this is my first time hearing that, but it's obviously an area that needs a lot more attention and a lot more leadership in terms of making it a priority. I will do that as governor.
Thank you so much. You mentioned food deserts, and this is going to segue into DHEC because this is, they've tried to do the reorganization. We're going to want to hear from you on your opinion on that way of reorganizing or reconstructing it. But the food waste campaign by DHEC has been going on for a long time. And I'm just wondering, as governor, what can be done? What would you be able to do or try to do to champion ways of expanding that program, strengthening it so it's more effective at not just reducing food waste, but having some systems in place to distribute food that people would call wasted food. It's not food waste. It's a waste of food, right?
Right.
Through food banks and restaurants and so on, and just even the out of date food. And because DHEC's been doing this campaign for a while, and I think you know that one of the goals of the legislature has been to hamstring them. So could you answer that? And then I have another couple of questions about DHEC, but I'm going to ask you about the food waste and getting this food that we throw away to communities that are food deserts.
Yeah, it really, it breaks my heart to think about the amount of food that we waste. And, you know, especially when we've got so many South Carolinians who need food. As governor, I will certainly make that a priority, especially in our rural communities, because that could change in an instant. I believe that with public and private sector partnerships, that would be a sure way to make sure that we don't waste good food. Certainly, you know, we don't want anyone to get food that isn't good and isn't healthy, but we throw a lot of food away. And I wasn't aware until I started serving in office that these restaurants and, you know, folks who deal with food every day, serving the public, have to throw that food away at the end of the day. Whatever is left over cannot go to those in need, even if it's good food and food that isn't spoiled or you know, or bad. I do believe that we can change that, and I want to change that, especially for our rural residents who are struggling because they don't have access to food. And I want to be mindful and remind others of the fact that when Nikki Haley was serving, I remember that she wanted to cut SNAP benefits. It's like, you know, regardless of how much we know South Carolinians are struggling, and we know the areas that they're struggling in. We have leaders who, or elected officials rather, can't call them leaders, but we have elected officials who seem to turn a deaf ear to those who are in need and show no compassion, no empathy for them, and pull the rug out from under them. And that has been the case, not just under Henry McMaster, but we are in a global pandemic still. And, you know, to not take advantage of the opportunities that we have to partner with the private sector, those of us who are in the public sector, to make sure that all of our citizens are protected and all of our citizens are able to eat and have food, have access to food. So I will make sure that that is the case when I'm governor.
Thank you. And I know you will work on all of these things, but you know, what's going on at the is that we really are fighting against the myth that you can't protect the environment and grow the economy. And I think that's one of the basic misapplications of you know, the idea that we don't need to have DHEC be strong. And in fact, in other states, there's similar agencies in other states, and they're to follow EPA directives to protect the air, soil, and water. But here, South Carolina's DHEC had a dual and contradictory mandate. They were to protect the environment and to balance that with economic development. And so we've seen what that has led to, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because our time's going by. We've got people who are asking things in the chat. We want to give time for that. But we have 3 questions from that. And then, since the restructuring of DHEC, what is your opinion of placing the agency under the control of and answerable to the governor? And what's your vision as to DHEC's role and work? What would you do with this dual mandate?
Well, it's a big question. I did support S2, I think it was, the DHEC bill. And part of the reason I did is because we know that we need major substantive changes at DHEC. I was able to support it because I spoke with some of my colleagues who co-sponsored the bill. It was a bipartisan bill, and it does break up DHEC so that they hopefully will be better able to focus on mental health and behavioral health, as well as the environment and the issues that we're talking about today. So, you know, I hate to say that none of us really know how that is going to, play out. But I do think that the template or the blueprint or the idea, the notion that we would separate the two and put those two areas, key areas, and put them under one umbrella in the way that Senator Peeler has prescribed in his bill is definitely worth pursuing. And I think that's where we are as a caucus, obviously, because it got overwhelming support. It was a bipartisan bill. But I disagree with the notion that you can't protect the environment and the economy, of course. I believe you can do both. And the Republicans are very good at giving us those false narratives and false choices. They've done the same thing with employment and making sure that they put the narrative out there that you can either be pro-business or pro-worker, but you can't be both. And that too is a lie. So we have to not only reject those sentiments and those narratives that are purposely put out there to make us look like we are less democratic by supporting the environment and the economy and supporting workers and businesses. But we have to take the necessary actions to protect, to actually do the work and show that it is possible, because that is what matters. And that's what our citizens need and deserve. And that's what we can and should do. I can tell you that as governor, I will reject all of those false choices that we've been given over the years. And to some extent, I think we have to rethink the way we talk about those issues, because we have a tendency to further those narratives by only focusing on one aspect of it and not the other. But there has to be balance in all of it. And as governor, I have to make that those issues a priority and enlighten voters about how we can achieve that together. I do believe that it is possible. And I hope that South Carolinians agree with me and will come together to create the collaboration and the partnerships that I know will put us on the other list, the list that we want to be on. We are notoriously reactive in South Carolina, and when we can see a train wreck coming a million miles away and then throw up our hands and do nothing until it hits us. So, oops, my computer said you're about to raise your hand. I'm like, no, I'm not. So, we have to make sure that we are actually taking action to do right by all South Carolinians and make sure that those false narratives don't prevail and false choices.
Thank you very much. And yeah, I imagine the questions about DHEC we could take, another 2 hours. I'm going to go ahead and move to something else, but we are very concerned that year by year, regulations are weakened and polluting industries are being overtly invited because they like to come here because we don't work on enforcement. And I know you mentioned enforcement earlier, which is why the question is, with restructuring, you answered that one, but what would be your vision as to DHEC's role in work if they've got a mandate to take care of economics and the environment? I don't believe any agency in other states do that. Their environmental agency is to protect the environment. So I'm wondering what you think should happen with that mandate that pits one against the other.
I think as governor, we unfortunately have a governor right now who doesn't seem to be interested in doing both. I do think that our attention is divided, but it's always been divided. To be in a pandemic, even during the height of the pandemic, when I asked DHEC the question about one of their major tasks is to protect the public health of South Carolinians. And in my opinion, their hands were tied even to do that because of the political, the fact that our governor politicized the pandemic and forced them and us to pick a side. Did we want protection, or did we want the economy to get back on track? Because the two, according to this governor, are mutually exclusive. That is a lie. They are not. But when the governor appoints the director of DHEC and has influence and authority over its board, that is what happens. And we saw that during a pandemic. During the pandemic, I don't think that any of us thought that he would be able to do that because of the areas that DHEC is obviously supposed to handle. But one of the questions I asked the director before he was confirmed is whether he would be able to rise above the politics and do right by the people of South Carolina versus listening to and being impacted by and influenced by the governor's office. And he assured me that he would. And I can't say that I was, that he didn't try. I can't say that he didn't try, but we as members of the General Assembly have to give this agency and any agency the support it needs to do the job. When we politicize it, we don't hurt anybody but the people of South Carolina. And so, while I disagree with the myth that you can't protect the environment and the economy, and I do admit that our focus has been divided. It has been divided not because it's not possible to protect the people and the economy and the environment. It is that way because of the politics that have been deliberately put into place to keep them from doing what they are tasked to do. And so as governor, I obviously have a different vision for South Carolina, one where our rural communities are safe, are protected. And that leadership comes from the top. DHEC is not going to buck the governor as much as I wanted them to. They just didn't feel that they had the ability to do that because of his influence. And so we have to be very careful about looking at the policies that are in place and not paying attention to how they are enforced and what the outside influences are that would cause them to not be enforced like we saw during this pandemic. And before I finish, let me just say that when the Republican majority tried to circumvent DHEC regulations and guidelines and give this company a pass. I think it was the Porology bill. I was one of the leading champions of not making exceptions for any corporation that is seeking to do business in South Carolina. I think, if my memory serves me correctly, they wanted us to carve out an exemption or an exception for them. And that is a very slippery slope, because once we start doing that, we already have very disparate treatment when it comes to enforcement. That would have given them free reign to do exactly what they want to do and allow the economy to trump environmental protections once again. And I wasn't for it then. I won't be for it as governor.
Thank you. We have a question that's from the chat related to that both the House and Senate signed off on Thursday on legislation that eases some of those environmental requirements. And that could eventually allow companies to open without posting bonds for cleaning up. And I'm just wondering if you will look into that, or if you could comment about that bill, because we're not familiar with all the ins and outs of it. Are you familiar with that one?
I'm not as familiar with that. I mean, I know that I have always voted against any regulations that would not require some level of fiscal responsibility for any businesses that are looking to do business here. And that is the reason that I strongly oppose the Porology bill. And that has been a bipartisan effort to some extent. I know that Senator Sin and I were on the same page as it related to that one bill. And so I will look into the bill that relaxes their guidelines, because if in fact it does, have we already, I don't remember seeing that bill.
I'm not sure. It was a question that came in the chat, and I just wanted to.
And we're inundated.
I'm not trying to catch you in anything.
No. And
we're having a conversation, so I just felt
right. No, and you already know I'm not afraid to say if I don't know about something, and I'm more than willing to look it up. I'm one person, and I can't know all of the bills or bill numbers, because the reality is the Republicans are very intentional about setting their crazy, reckless bills on special order and making those the priority. So we have to be vigilant just to, make sure that we are dealing with. Right now, we don't have a choice. Convention of States, and they're wanting to rewrite the Constitution and all this anti-public education stuff. And, so forgive me if I don't, if a bill doesn't sound familiar, but I will go back and look at it to make sure that is not the case, because I would knowingly vote for something that would decrease those regulations in that way.
We know you'll look at it, and we don't know which of those, but we'll work with you on that. We have a question from Virginia Sanders. She lives in the Lower Richland area of the County of Richland. She's a Sierra Club organizer for Healthy Communities, which is a national campaign. I'm going to read her question verbatim, if I may.
Sure.
So I'm working in Marion County, South Carolina, trying to help residents whose homes were flooded. Many SC residents are unaware that climate change can and does cause extreme weather flooding in Marion County. And flooding has and continues to occur in communities of color in Marion County. Homes are not fit to live in because of mold. These residents have no place else to go because they are low income, and many are seniors on limited income. These Marion residents stay in their moldy homes knowing it's detrimental to their health because they are on limited incomes. Buying flood insurance is not an option for many of them. They live on Social Security. When given the choice of buying food and medication versus paying for flood insurance, insurance loses every time. This shouldn't be happening in the richest country of the world. And I'm going to add something that Virginia has told us, that the county told them they should elevate their houses, build them up like not still, kind of like stilts. They should raise them up. this is just not right. What can you as governor do to alleviate these sorts of conditions?
That's a big
know
question.
we are really
It-
loading you down, but these are
No,
these
it's
are
okay.
these are on our minds. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, these are great questions. And so as governor, I will do what I've always done. I will attempt to address the systemic reforms that I know we need, particularly those that impact rural communities like Marion County. Marion County is very close to my hometown county, Marlborough County. And although some of the challenges are different, so many of the challenges are the same. And I think we are in South Carolina, in addition to being reactive, we also have refused to address the systemic issues and ills that are still plaguing so many of our rural communities. And I don't understand how we can talk about a thriving economy, talking about a healthy South Carolina or a healthy workforce, or anything healthy, when so many of our citizens are suffering and struggling. And when I think about residents having to live in mold and having to make life-changing and in many cases life-threatening decisions about whether they will be able to buy medicines or or buy food, or whether they will be able to live and pay rent, or be homeless, or have to live, in less than ideal conditions. I do think that that one way that we will begin to address the systemic ills in a comprehensive way is through collaboration and partnerships. These are communities that have always been saddled with inequities and have always been last when it comes to all of the issues and challenges that we face as a state. But for them to bear the brunt of that tells me that we have got to focus on environmental justice in those communities. That is an area that I will always be committed to and always fighting for, because I have family. That is my community. Those are my communities, and it bothers me to see that the water is toxic in many of those communities. The land is toxic in many of those communities. The air is polluted and toxic in so many of those communities. And it begs the question, why are they bearing the brunt of that abuse and injustice in the rural portions of our state? Those are the things that we can change. And I'm not saying that government is the answer for all of it, but government is certainly has a key role, a critical role to play in fixing it, because that is what government is supposed to do. It's supposed to protect and serve the citizens of our state, regardless of where they live, regardless of the resources they already have. We are to fill in those gaps and make sure that nobody falls through the gaps. So as governor, I will be committed not just to the environmental improvements and investments that I know we need, but also the infrastructure investments, because a lot of that, when we think about flooding, Marion County is not really different from other counties like Charleston County and other low country counties that are underwater every time it rains. The difference is Charleston is not a small rural community that's already deficient in many areas that Marion County is deficient in. It has access to many more resources and much more collaboration and much more support. And it's those counties like Charleston County that seem to get even more support from our state government. And our state government officials, and that should not be. We should start with the least of these and work our way up. And I will do that as governor. Coming from a rural community like Marlborough County, I understand all too well the challenges that our rural communities face, and whether they are in the PD area, like where I'm from, like where Marion County is, or whether they're in the upstate or the low country. I believe that all of our rural communities are deserving of adequate support and adequate resources. And that's just not happening right now under this governor and under this Republican House and Senate. But I will work with them to the extent that I can. And I know how to work with our General Assembly when I need to, and I know how to fight when I need to. And I am a fighter. I'm not afraid to tackle the tough issues, even when I've been advised by members of my own party not to, because they thought it would be hurtful to me in my re-elections. But it's not about my re-elections. It's not about my election. It's about my voice. Because if I don't use my voice for the people, then the people don't have a voice. And so I'll continue to be a voice to work with the General Assembly and others in the private sector to make sure that we have the critical funding for long-term sustainability of our roads, our bridges, our ports, our dams. I just had almost a 3-hour meeting with members of residents of Senate District 22 who live in Forest Acres and have been disenfranchised in many ways by the damage that was caused during the historic flood 7 years ago. And still, we are grappling, trying to get state government to do something. And I was talking to them about the ARPA money and other resources that are available. But, the federal government and the Biden administration are really trying to bail us out. And we have leaders who are still standing in the way of that by not accessing, not requesting the resources that are available from the federal government and the Biden administration, but also not willing to put any skin in the game and touting and bragging about all this surplus money. Well, you can't have surplus when your citizens are not, when their basic needs are not being met. And to have residents that we know are living in homes that are not fit because of mold, and to have our streets flood. And I just saw something on the news when I caught it the other day that people are underwater in Sumter. I mean, this is happening all over our state. And it's incumbent upon our General Assembly at the state level, not at the federal level, but at the state level, to make sure that our residents are safe and protected and not underwater every time it rains. These are situations that are well within our control, and we have to do right by all South Carolinians.
Thank you.
And I will do that as governor.
It was a pleasure to do this, and because it was so great, our time has just evaporated. But we wanted to let people know that if your question was not addressed, if it was in the chat or in the Q&A, we'll Senator McLeod, may we get these questions to you and have a response for those people who, they've got great questions. We really didn't get into energy. We got some great ones. But I'm supposed to be turning this over, and I was asking if people would put their contact info into the chat. And if you're uncomfortable with that, I'm going to let our Revolution people tell you how they plan to get back to everyone.
Okay.
Thank you. I enjoyed this.
Thank you. I always enjoy being with all of you. Thanks so much for giving me the opportunity. I'm glad to be here. Grateful to have your support and endorsement, and I hope I continue to make you proud, and I need you in this fight with me. Please, if you support me, go to miaforsc.com and join us so that we can tackle these environmental injustices together.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Keith.
And thank you very much for that wonderful moderation, and Senator McLeod.
Yes, she did a great job.
And so I'm going to turn it back over to Hal to wrap things up. Everyone have a nice weekend.
That was a great forum.
too.
I'm so impressed. And I have a quick question for you, Senator McLeod. When you say it's MIA for SC, is that FORSC or?
That's FOR. Thank you for allowing me to clarify that. That's MIAFORSC,
All right.
as in South Carolina.
I'm going to go ahead and just type that right in one more time. I think that's correct, although I gave it to just Pamela, who did a tremendous job moderating. And I just want to say something about,
did.
we're so excited to work with you, Senator McLeod, and the endorsement. And you said something, I mean, beyond all the great answers and the obvious knowledge, but you said something that made me think you're absolutely the right person beyond everything else. And that is when you said, hey, I'm willing to learn. I don't know everything. And no, none of us do. And we have
That's
to,
right.
to help each other. And too many
That's
people in your profession, politicians, don't seem to, they get to a point where they think they know everything, and
Everything, right.
we're
They
supposed
know everything, and they get to play God on every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday that we're in session. So, I'm always quick to point out that I don't know it all, and I love to listen more than I talk for that reason, because I learn so much from the people who are struggling with these issues every day. So, thank you.
Well, thank you so much
I've
again,
enjoyed
Senator.
being here.
Super excited to work with you and reach out to your
Same
campaign.
here.
I do want to urge folks, if you want to get involved and you want to get involved with the Senator Mia for governor campaign, please do email ourrevolutionsc@outlook.com, ourrevolutionsc at outlook.com. That's just to reach out to us, and we'll get you plugged in to everything we're doing in South Carolina and around the country as well. If you'd like to help us phone bank, ourrev.us/phone bank. We are phone banking for members. We're really focused on Senator Nina Turner for Congress right now, and we will also be doing phone banks, I'm certain, for Senator McLeod as well. So if you'd like to help us with the phone banking, we'd greatly appreciate that support. That's a way you can get involved right now and help us win elections. And we've discussed already our success. And that brings us to the end of the call. And a great call. Great to make new friends on this call, including, of course, Pamela Greenlaw from the Sierra Club Midlands Group. And
Thank you, Pamela.
and seeing you
I
again,
love her.
Senator McLeod. We have our chant, which is, I'll just do it once because we're just past noon, and I think there's basketball today. Maybe I'm wrong about that. So I'll say when we organize, you say we win, and that'll do it. So when we organize,
We
We
win.
Win.
have a great evening, great weekend, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.